me. I was a professor here at AUC. I taught acting, and I directed a production of Measure for Measure. It's an adaptation of Shakespeare's play into Egyptian colloquial Arabic. Let me introduce you to myself. Before I was a professor at AUC, I went and got my master's degree in classical acting from the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama in London. And this is mainly when my focus on Shakespeare was at its height, basically. We studied Shakespeare's texts and we performed them. During this 1 year, there was a focus on them. And how I was exposed to Shakespeare then was through seeing it, watching it, and experiencing it live, whether in performance or watching it in the best theaters, basically in London. The Globe Theatre, the Young Vic, the Old Vic, any production that was on then, I was there. So I saw a range of them. And what really struck me about them is how they speak to today's audience, how they are productions of the now, of people now, how they speak now, how they see things now, how they interact with each other, how they dress, how they speak, how they move, how everything is quite contemporary. And it was interesting actually, because before then I was quite used to a certain style of Shakespeare. There was a Shakespearean style of acting, or a Shakespearean style of putting on a play or a performance that was quite lodged in my head. And then I saw these actors perform and these productions being put together in that way, and I thought, wow, okay, it's the same text, they're the same words, however spoken, how we are speaking now. The style of it, and the demeanor, and the physicality, and the voice, and everything. It spoke to me now. So that's what I found really interesting. So what happened was, the background of Measure for Measure was, I was quite honored to be proposed to direct the Arabic production of the year by Dr. Mahmoud al-Louzi. And I accepted, went through a range of choices, a few of them already ready-made Arabic texts, then eventually settled on Measure for Measure, which I proposed to the department and they thankfully agreed. I said, okay, I will take Measure for Measure. It will be an Egyptian colloquial adaptation of it, and I will play it in the round. Beautiful words, very easy to say, very easy to think, great ideas that I had. After that, of course, I was very excited and I couldn't wait to start. And then, of course, fear kicked in. I thought, wow, this is my first ever directorial job. First ever adaptation of a play from English to Arabic. And I'm doing it in the round. So a lot of challenges, crazy challenges. I thought, okay, what have I brought upon myself? But I thought, okay, I've decided to do this. I will do it. I will do something that I'm not used to. I will get out of my comfort zone. So I did. What happened was, first of all, I read the text and reread the text and reread it and studied it and researched the world of the play and Shakespeare's world then, when he wrote the play. Then I started asking myself questions. Okay, could this play speak to an Egyptian audience now? And I read it and read it and read it, and I thought eventually, yes. And I also could put in my own input with the stylization of the piece and the edits and the cuts and everything, and I can make it speak to an Egyptian audience now, with a lot of my own input and a lot of my own choices with the text. So, after many reads and rereads of the text, I decided, okay, I will forget about the Arabic version for now. What I need to do to start working on this is I will work on the English version only. Okay, this is how I started. Working on the English version, making a cut of it, editing what I don't need to show, what in my opinion only serves the drama or the story that I want to tell. Okay, so this is how it started. This is how it started, me taking out some characters, taking out whole storylines out of the play that I thought didn't serve the story that I wanted to tell. Okay? And then, after going through those edits, came the process of switching it into colloquial Egyptian Arabic. And that started with me taking one translation that was the base of the work, which was a translation by Dr. Muhammad Alemi, an established translator of Shakespeare's plays specifically. Shakespeare among many other Elizabethan and Jacobean playwrights. So I took the translation by Dr. Muhammad Alemi. It took a while to find, but then I found it. And what was quite interesting about it is that it was the only translation that stuck to the verse and the meter of Shakespeare's play, basically. So he translated it into Arabic verse, which isn't the same as Shakespeare's iambic pentameter, but into Arabic verse with its own Arabic meter. Okay. The play is comprised of 65% verse, 35% prose. Okay. Dr. Muhammad Alemi stuck to that to the T. 65% verse exactly and 35% prose. Okay, so prose basically no meter. Okay, and translated the prose into more of what is now the contemporary classical Arabic. Please come on. So I thought, okay, this is the best way for me to start working on this project. Okay, this translation has set the bar very high for this text. So how about I take that as inspiration for my colloquial adaptation? Okay, so I took that. I had finished editing the English version. Okay, so I was ready with my version of Measure for Measure, the story I wanted to tell with these characters, and I thought, okay, let's work on Dr. Muhammad Alemi's script. And that was another major challenge that I faced. What did I do then? The style and the poetry and the wording that Dr. Muhammad Alemi used was, I thought, quite challenging and a lot of the time not easily accessible. Okay, to when I'm reading it or when I'm trying to imagine it being performed. And sticking to the verse, I thought, would be quite challenging. That was something I wanted to do, I wished to do, was have a fully, measured translation into verse and into prose. But then, what happened was, I met with a very good friend of mine called Said Ragab, who is an actor now in Egypt, and he also had translated a version of Shakespeare Midsummer Night's Dream into Egyptian colloquial Arabic about 15 years ago. So I called Sayyid and I said, okay, let's meet up. Let's discuss this process that you went through. And Sayyid thankfully brought his own version of Midsummer Night's Dream, which was also an adaptation. He had changed the characters' names. And altered some of the plot lines and made his own version of it, which I thought was quite interesting. And then I asked Sayyid, I was like, Sayyid, I really want to stick to the verse and make it a fully measured piece and write that. And Sayyid looked at me and he was like, okay, why do you want to do that? He was like, do you think audiences now, however intelligent or knowledgeable they are, will sit there thinking, okay, wow, this is a fully measured piece, or the verse is great, or this sounds great to me. No, he was like, Waleed, what you need to do is tell the story. Tell the story of the piece. And you're putting too much pressure on yourself by thinking that, okay, how about I do it in full verse or full prose? Okay, just tell the story. However it comes out, pick your words carefully, yes? Have an idea of what the style of the piece is like, and go from there. So, and that was actually quite a path-determining meeting that I had with Sayyid Ragab. And then what happened after that, I was like, okay, what I need to do is I had a workshop, actually. I didn't finish this piece on my own. I had a workshop for the translation. I had to hire the translator, and she took Dr. Muhammad Anani's script, my version, of course, after edits, and transmitted that into colloquial Egyptian Arabic. And then I took that. I found 2 more translations of Measure for Measure, one by Dr. Ibrahim Zaki Khurshid and another anonymous one. To this day, I don't know who wrote it. I found it online. It's anonymous without a playwright. So I took these 2, and then I took 2 different editions of Measure for Measure, one being the New Cambridge, the other being the Arden Shakespeare, and actually, and the third one, the Royal Shakespeare Company version of Shakespeare, of Measure for Measure. Why did I do that? Why did I sit with 6 scripts in front of me, trying to put together and pick and choose different interpretations of certain words or certain expressions or everything? Because my experience in performing Shakespeare, I was lucky enough to perform the role of Touchstone in As You Like It when I was doing my master's in London. Touchstone is what is dubbed by a lot of scholars and actors in history as the actor's nightmare. Why the actor's nightmare? Is a lot of Touchstone is the fool in As You Like It, basically. A lot of Touchstone's jokes are quite outdated and quite of their time. And his presence in the play is very hard to pinpoint and rationalize why he's there and why he's speaking and why he does the things that he does. So it was quite a challenge for me as an actor. So what I did with that is I used to sit in rehearsals when I'm not acting with 3 different versions of the same play, reading the same lines with different references. Each edition would explain Touchstone's lines in a completely, I wouldn't say completely different way, but sometimes they'd have different interpretations of the same words, the same expressions. Sometimes different editions would support one another, sometimes they'd contradict, and then I would have to make my choice about what Touchstone is saying in that line, and how I can transmit that into a performance, convey that through a performance. So what I got out of that was the freedom to choose. Okay? In performance, in acting, a lot of what actors do is make a choice about the text that is presented in front of them, because first of all, we don't have the playwright with us. And we don't usually consult with the playwright to say, oh, what did you intend behind that line? Let me perform from there. No, I'm going to make a choice. So I did the same with the translation. Sitting with 6 different editions of the play, I took from many different sources until I came up with my own piece, my own story, the story I wanted to tell with that or Measure for Measure. And what came about was the finished piece after I took it from the translator, after I put it together. I didn't show it to the actors until the 3rd or 4th rehearsal. I didn't show it to anyone. I only had the scenes I used for the audition. And the script was literally finished the day before I showed it to the actors, because I kept going through edits and edits and edits because I wanted to think of what the best way was to convey every single line and every single word that Shakespeare uses is used with an intent. For example, in the play, how Shakespeare writes, especially in Measure for Measure, is that the poetry and the verse is quite erratic. It's not very regular in Measure for Measure. You have plays, for example, such as Midsummer Night's Dream, where you have the verses more regular, and he sticks more to the iambic pentameter, which is basically the dum, the dum, the dum, the dum. However, in measure for measure, you'd have longer lines, for example. Instead of 10 syllables, you'd have 11 syllables, which are called feminine endings. Or short lines that are 9 syllables. Or shared lines basically that are maybe five syllables, and then the next character jumps in to continue that verse. So Shakespeare basically writes for actors and tells them in the script, in the verse, how they should perform the lines through meter. I didn't do that in the Arabic version. However, in the translation, and what I strive to do in the text and with the actors, is that I found that through exercises and through working with them and through them understanding their characters, they naturally shared lines. Naturally. I didn't have to say, oh, you need to jump in then. It makes sense. It made sense to them that there shouldn't be a pause here or they shouldn't do this there. The text came to life through the performance, not just through the words. I was writing for actors. I was writing for words to be performed, to be said out loud. So I went through a process of picking and choosing a lot, and eventually, I don't think I'll ever be fully 100% happy with the script. I mean, it's even till now, we did it, we performed it once here in this theater, in the Gerhardt, and then we took it to the Falaki Theater downtown, which I was quite happy about, and I had made edits then as well, edits and cuts then, and if I do it again, I would still edit some more. It's a never-ending process because the thing is, when I hear actors perform and when I see them on stage, yes, some words come alive, and I'm like, yeah, that's it. That's exactly what was intended, or what I intended behind that line. And sometimes I'm like, no. I still didn't get to the full meaning behind that line, the original and what it says, and then I change it. But what I did, and thankfully what I was able to achieve with the actors, is that once we started rehearsals, I did not change anything. Once we were there, once we were working in the Gerhardt Theater, the only change I made to the rehearsal process is I cut a speech that we never rehearsed. Yeah, it was the Duke's speech at the end of Act 3, but we never rehearsed that, and that was the only thing. Otherwise, no words were changed, no lines were changed, nothing. I did not want to confuse the actors. So this is why I made it a point to come into the rehearsal process with a finished piece for now. And then, if we do it again, I'll change it then, and then they can adapt to that. But yeah, this is what I strive to do. So yes. Any questions so far? Before I'm going to show you a video now from just this short video from the production. But yes, any questions? Yes, basically.
Would you have done it differently if you wrote this or you adapted this text for the market, like for print?
Would I have done it differently? Absolutely not. No, the thing is, what I was thinking was that with that piece and how I adapted it is how to tell the story. And how to tell the story not just in general, for this audience, for these people that are going to come and watch. I know which audience is coming. And I don't just mean the Egyptian AUC audience. I mean the Egyptian audiences in general, or the audiences in Egypt now. Okay? I'm writing for them. And this is what Shakespeare was doing as well. That's the thing. What I really strive to do with the performance is I didn't want anyone to come and watch the show and misunderstand or refuse to understand the line because, oh, this is Shakespeare, so of course some of it doesn't make sense. This is exactly what I didn't want, because that happens a lot in England, for example, which was quite interesting, because when I was there, when I lived there for that 1 year, you will find masses of people thinking Shakespeare is this thing that is above us, and we don't understand it. English people will go and watch these plays and say, I don't enjoy Shakespeare, I don't get it, I don't understand what they're on about. But it's interesting, the same people, when you put them, for example, send them, for example, to watch a production in the Globe Theater, which I've attended, when the actors know exactly what they're doing, what they're trying to convey through those characters, what they're trying to convey through the text, and when there's an overall vision and everyone knows exactly what they're doing, somehow people get it, people understand it. The same words, the same exact words, people understand them. So what I didn't want to do is for people to come in and say, oh, this is just Shakespeare. This is why the script went through so many rigorous edits. I wanted everyone to understand it, whether in the market or the AUC audience or the Egyptian audience or any audience that is coming to watch the play. This is for people to see something that they can relate to. It's not just that I wanted to do an adaptation of Shakespeare. No, I made quite a few choices with it. I mean, Sayyid, for example, had changed the characters' names. They were Salwa and Mona and Layla and all of these Egyptian names, which was fun, and he actually recommended that I should do the same thing, and I thought about it. I considered it for a while, but then I made a choice with the piece because some of the plot lines, especially Claudio's plot line, Claudio and Juliet, when they're talking, for example, about the dowry and how the wife didn't pay the dowry, hence they couldn't get married. That, for Egyptian audiences, would seem odd, because in this culture, for example, it's the other way. It's the other way. The man pays the dowry. Hence, because of plot lines like that, I actually decided to keep the characters with their names, so that yes, they are speaking in Egyptian. However, this distance that I'm establishing with the names, people can still understand the action that is happening. However, know that these characters are not from Egypt necessarily. Yeah. So I kept the characters' names as they are: Claudio, Lucio, Angelo, Isabella, Mariana. Everything stayed the same, except for two. Except for two characters, which were Mistress Overdone and Pompey. I again made a choice with those. That choice came to me about 3 days before we started rehearsals and before I gave out the script. Because Mistress Overdone, the word overdone means something integral to the character. And the word overdone especially is not something that is quite common, that everyone would know. And of course, Mistress Overdone in the play is a pimp and a prostitute, and a very well established prostitute as well. So and the word overdone, I thought, okay, I need people to understand what that means. So do I just keep her as overdone and limit myself, or can I just change it and translate it into Arabic? So I translated it into Mistawaya, which could translate to cooked or also overcooked. So I thought, okay, I will change that. And with Pompey as well. Pompey is also a pimp in the play, and they work together, him and Mistress Overdone. And I, especially with that, to me as well, if I consider myself an audience member, if I hear of a pimp in Egypt called Pompey with a P, it to me seemed quite out of place. It would be hard to sympathize or to kind of get into that world. I wouldn't accept that, especially since if a character comes from that background, it would be very hard to have a name like Pompey specifically. Yeah. So this is why I changed it and made it Bomba, which people thankfully saw as a pimp's nickname. Yeah. So that helped. So I only changed those two characters. However, everyone else I didn't need to change. Kept them as they are. Yes, Frank.
Did you ever think of incorporating the actors into the translating process? I know you said a while ago that you were concerned about confusing the actors, but I guess I asked this question because the only time I've ever done anything like this was the new translation of Molière, and we worked with the actors a lot, the writer and I, and a lot of new plays everywhere come into being through workshopping with actors speaking wonder if you ever thought about that and how it might have turned out had you gone that direction.
That's interesting because when I was working on the text, I didn't have actors. I hadn't cast the play then. However, that's interesting because I did it again. I could have involved them in the second round of edits and changes. However, with that, with this text specifically, I thought no, and because it's also an experience I'm going through for the first time as well. And because I could have a lot of different opinions about the play and about the interpretation and about which edition to use and the references and everything. But I thought no, having a smaller group for this experience specifically would be easier for me to go through it. However, if I were to do it again, no, I would consider including the actors in that experience.
But in some ways, I think we were included when France had the workshop that they're coming about through workshops and stuff. I think a lot of the exercises did help us with the characters and telling the story.
Exactly. Because we did. The thing is, with exactly, and what Ali's saying, Ali played Lucio in the production. And we did workshop some scenes, and we did add some scenes to the show as well, some improvised scenes that were part of the overall drama, of course. They weren't Shakespeare's words, they were the actors, and they were improvising them on the spot every night, actually. We didn't actually write any script. So we did use the actors in that sense. However, in Shakespeare's text specifically, I thought it would be it's quite a fine process that I thought maybe this time I'll go through it on my own or with the team of workshop writers I had. But maybe next time I would do that. Yes.
Well, thank you. It's wonderful to have you.
Thank you.
A couple of questions.
Sure.
One, you've talked repeatedly about the story that I wanted to tell Egyptians, as being something other than, that story that Shakespeare wanted to tell. So would you talk a little bit about that story, but also the other aspect of, adaptation, especially for theatre, beyond, translation and the actors themselves, their voices, stage directions, right, of the original text, and how you dealt with that. I mean, what did you use? What did you change?
Of course. Something that struck me about the story of Measure for Measure, and why I thought it would be intriguing to be adapted into Egypt, or why I thought people would be interested to hear about it or see it, is that first of all, it presents a lot of themes such as religion, politics, corruption, manipulation, abuse, a lot of these themes that were quite present in the play. And I thought, okay, what have we gone through in the past few years? What has Egypt witnessed? What can people see and recognize straight away? What would people hear about and say, oh yes, I heard this on television, or I heard this on the street, or I saw it in the newspaper, or I saw it here or there, or everything. And specifically about Measure for Measure, and this is something I discussed a lot with the actors when we were working on workshopping the scenes, is the theme of extremism specifically. Because in Measure for Measure, it's quite interesting how characters deal with the situations that they're thrown into. Quite unexpected, for example, for a character such as Isabella, for example, who, when she's finally faced with Angelo's aggressive pursuit to get her, she says, okay, well, I will go and tell my brother that he needs to die. There's no other choice. That's the thing. It's black or white for these characters specifically. It's this or that. There's no middle ground. There's no, oh, I can find a solution. I can find another way to deal with this. Mistress Overdone in Pompeii, for example, one of their brothels gets shut down, they run to the other one, they open another one, straight away. Angelo, who's the most rigid, pious, serious person, and quite moral in his actions, sees Isabella and falls apart. hears her, not just sees her, hears what she has to say, and he crumbles and cannot put himself back together. It's quite interesting how it's sudden, 180. So extremism is what I wanted to show through this, how people can go from one extreme to the other so quickly, and how an Egyptian audience could relate to this. Just looking through politics nowadays, and looking through people's actions and people's behavior and mannerisms these days, how extremism fits. So yeah, this is the story I wanted to convey. This is the element, the factor that I thought people could see that and relate to it. When it comes to handling the play, for example, and the stage directions, I took out a lot of them. With the stage directions, that's the thing. It's the play, for example, it has about 23 characters, and that plus attendants and lords and all of that, which I cut to 12 characters out of the 23. Two of our actresses played double roles, so I only had 12 actors playing 14 characters. And when it comes to sticking to the stage directions, with the design and the style and the lack of set, we didn't have a set in the production, for example. We only had a table and 2 chairs in a play that's acted in the round, okay, on a cross-shaped stage. And when it came to the stage directions, I didn't feel the need to stick to them because in my sense, I was telling my own story with that piece. Do I need to stick to something that Shakespeare wrote? I could, and I could make the choice not to as well. And I made the choice not to. I made the choice to yes, use some of it. I didn't take it out completely, but only some of it. The bits that serve me in the story, and then I changed some other things. Yes, for example, I had a character, for example, that gets decapitated off stage, and then his head is brought into the stage. Yes, I kept that, for example. That is an integral part of the story that I couldn't take out. But yes, I made choices with other things. Yeah. Yes.
So you talked about wanting to preserve the original names as a way of maintaining a bit of a distancing effect. But
Yeah.
I noticed when I saw the production, you changed Vienna to Albania.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Yes, about Vienna as well. The play, of course, is supposed to be set in Vienna, which there's a conflict about that as well, because okay, Shakespeare wrote the text originally in 1603, 1604. The script went through a few edits on the way. By the time in 1623, when the first folio with Shakespeare's plays came out, people these days are in conflict about the fact that whether it was originally set in Italy or in Vienna. Okay? Now we're settled that the play happens in Vienna. However, we actually don't know what Shakespeare wrote. Maybe he said Italy, maybe he said Vienna. So I thought, okay, I have characters that speak in Egyptian colloquial Arabic. I do have names such as Angelo and Lucio, which are not Egyptian. However, the style that we were going through, the style of performance, I wanted the actors to bring out what they bring out naturally as Egyptian actors. Speak the lines in their Egyptian mannerisms, with their Egyptian physicalities, with everything about them that is Egyptian. I allowed. However, they had foreign names. And then I thought, okay, these characters are going to be speaking and acting in this manner, and then they'll say, yes, the law's in Vienna. So this I struggled with a bit, because I wanted people to see themselves in those characters in a way, in the best way I could, even though they're called Lucio and Angelo and Isabella. So I actually found an alternative for it, and I took out Vienna and made it Baladna, which isn't specific. بلدنا means our country. So and the thing is about the play specifically is that what it tackles when it comes to the Viennese culture is mainly Catholicism. Okay, this is the issue. This is why in the time we would say that Shakespeare chose to set it in Vienna, because England was heavily Protestant at the time. So it was not okay to criticize the ruler and say in the play, for example, that he's from a Protestant country, the ruler being King James at the time. So Shakespeare set it in Vienna as a way to protect himself from any criticism, saying, I am not talking about you. I'm not talking about our ruler now. I'm talking about a Viennese ruler. Okay? So yes, and with the confusion about whether it was set in Vienna or Italy, I thought, okay, I am free to make it in Vienna, or make it in Italy, or make it in Egypt, or Cuba, or whatever. You know, it is my choice. I could change it, especially given the fact that Measure for Measure itself is not an original piece by Shakespeare. Anyway, it's a combination of two different stories. That he, of course, the thing is, Shakespeare takes these stories and writes the best version of them, basically. The most renowned, the one that stays through time, basically. So if Shakespeare was that free with the story, why can't I be free? Yeah?
I have a question.
Yes.
You brought up the fact that Shakespeare lived in a Protestant country, so he chose to distance himself or distance the play and write about Catholicism. Is that what well, I'm not implying anything, but could you have done it instead of having a priest having a shift?
I did think of that. I did think of that for a while, actually, changing it completely and making it into an Islamic world. But then I went against that. I thought the play spoke for itself enough, without me having to spoon feed people saying, Andrew. I didn't feel like I needed to do that. I felt the story drove itself enough, and I thought it would be extremely challenging. I felt like it would be uprooting the text, basically, because it's filled with Christian references, left, right, and center, up and down, all over. I would have had to change so much. So aside from the fact that I didn't want to spoon feed the audience, I felt like this I need to not mention Shakespeare. It's my own thing, and that's not what I was heading for with this piece. Yes, miss.
How did you feel when the cross and the Christian cross and the honor to Jesus and all of these like superior beliefs that occur in the play? How do you see the audience coming in, seeing this? They can relate to the Egyptian community, but like, how did you see that coming? Was it a fear to you?
A fear about the Christian
Like
themes of the
basically,
play?
rephrasing my question, what really were you highlighting in this play? The Christian cross, the Christian state, the holiness of religion.
The thing is with that, I was telling a story. The Christian element or the Christian themes in the play are a tool to tell the story, are a way to advance the story forward. However, with Christianity specifically, no, I could have easily changed it into Islam. The thing is, it would have been a challenge, yes, but I could. However, that wasn't the focus. I decided to keep the story as is with its Christian themes. Yes, religion is a key issue in this play, and religious manipulation and blackmail, and so religion needed to be there. And yes, I felt like keeping Christianity as is serves the story just fine. I didn't need to change that to make it more relatable to people and call him Sheikh Angelo. Sheikh Malek. Yeah. So yeah. Let me show you a video very quickly, and then we'll take more questions. Okay, this is a 2-minute video from the piece.
يطلع للسما، لكن خيالي ما بيسمعش كلامي وما فيش على لساني غيره. إيزابيلا، لساني بيردد اسم الرب زي ما يكون ماليش غير إني أمسك فيه. أنا جبت من قلبي شر جامد وبيعلى مداه على طول. أما شؤون الحكم في البلاد فدرستها زي ما أكون بدرس كتاب جميل ومفيد، لكن من كتر القراية نص جف مليت منه. يا سلام على المنصب الرفيع، يا سلام على الرعب اللي بتزرعه في قلب اللي مخنوع بيكتب الهدوم والزينة، لكن العقلين كمان بيتخدعوا بالمنظر المزيف. ويا شهوة، انتي مجرد شهوة. قرن الشيطان عمره ما هيتغير، حتى لو كتبنا عليه الملاك الطاهر.
Right, so this is a section from the play. This is Angelo's soliloquy, Blood Thou Art Blood, from Act 2, Scene 4 in Measure for Measure. And what we played with in this piece specifically, which was directed by our movement director Maria Doyle, was the issue of fantasy versus reality. Because this is a lot of what Angelo's talking about in this piece specifically, is what you see and how it comes across, and is it real? Is it, what's behind what I'm seeing? Take a line, for example, like "Blood, Thou Art Blood," which I spent about 2 hours choosing the words for. Just those 4 words. Why? Because, okay, blood, thou art blood. Blood, you are blood. What is he saying exactly when he says blood, thou art blood? And then in Arabic, the Muhammad Anani translation, the base, said وَيَا دِمَاء إِنَّمَا أَنْتِ دِمَاء, which is exactly that, blood, thou art blood. However, I thought, okay, I am going to have my Angelo say وَيَا دَمْ إِنْتَ مُجَرَّد دَمْ. Would the audience understand what we mean? This is the struggle I faced. So I thought, okay, and I went through many versions of the word blood. And then actually what was quite interesting is that in Ibrahim Zaki Khurshid's translation, blood thou art blood was translated into Ya shahwa inti mujarrad shahwa, or anti mujarrad shahwa, which means lust, thou art lust. Now he's talking about lust in this line specifically. So I thought, okay, how can I'm translating for an audience to understand, to live the experience. I need them to understand what Angelo's saying. So I'm not going to say blood, you are blood. I will say lust, you are lust. Or you are just lust. So this is what I had. This is the choice I made with that line, among many others. But I mean, we could spend hours and hours talking about the choices I made. But I mean, this is a choice I made with this one. Is that it's not a translation. This is an adaptation. It's not just a piece to be read on a piece of paper. It's a piece to be experienced by an audience, by a live audience. So yeah. Any questions? Any questions at all? Yeah. What do I want to do next? It's a secret for now. It's one of the works, but yes, I'm considering. Hopefully, no, I won't say. But it's in the works. It's thankfully been a successful experience, and hopefully we'll do some more of it. Yes.
Are we going to be included?
Our cast, yes, hopefully.
philosophical.
Oh,
Yeah.
depends on who's putting on the productions. And really, I was just an actor in that play, so. But yeah, no, I'd say stay in tune with the theater productions in AUC. We have lovely productions every semester. Definitely work on it. But hang on, I did Samia, and then I.
Because I'm going to ask him a question.
You're gonna ask Ali a question, Yalla.
I
Right.
see that we have some of the actors with us, right?
Yes, we have actually like about half of the cast with us today. Yes, and Shama as well, who was playing. Yes.
I wanted to ask Dan about how they experienced it, your choices, the choices you made for them. For example, how difficult or easy was it to be speaking Armenia and acting Egyptian and being called Egypt or whatever. You know, how did you sort of come to terms with these contradictions that you sort of had to live, inhabit on stage?
There was a moment of discovery. We all talk colloquial Arabic. I mean, if we walk right out of this room, we'll talk to each other in colloquial Arabic. There was this one rehearsal I can remember where we did this little exercise and we discovered that not one of the 12 cast members, in fact only one person with the exception of one person, can speak colloquial Arabic and properly enunciate colloquial Arabic. And it's the language we speak. But like,
You mean
like al-Ammay, I mean, some of the accents, I don't know, the vowels and consonants that we have now, the pop, dot, pop,
Yeah.
these, and none of them actually properly accented these little things that we have in our language and we have in our oral language. But on stage, it's, I think on stage it's just because, again, the language is a bit flowery. Shakespeare, Waleed maintained the imagery, and I guess there was, it is a bit close to our normal oral Arabic, but it was a challenge to really project that on stage and keep the natural flow that Waleed was trying to maintain in the text.
Yeah. So good, man.
Yeah, I think it was odd at first, but what helped me personally is when, for example, when I think about all the English productions that are made for originally, for example, Russian or whatever, like any plays that are not originally written in English, like for example, Ibsen, Molière, and whatever. They're written in different languages and they're all performed. They've been performed so many times in English, keeping these same names and the settings and everything, but like in a different language. So I think this also helped.
I think another thing that really helped us all was that Waleed didn't put the path. Like he left us to explore our path within the script, with of course like some guidance. If it crosses this line, no, it's like that. But he left us to really explore through improvisations and a lot of voice and movement with our lovely voice and movement coach. But both of them together like helped us explore the characters within the script, and we found like we knew what Waleed wanted from this. So it was really another style of theater that we really explored, and it was great.
Yeah, a lot of workshop, a lot of voice and movement exercises that, and a lot was discovered through those exercises for us, for myself and Maria, our movement director, when we were working on the show. For example, this scene was not in our minds whatsoever when we started the production. This came through workshopping the play and doing exercises and us getting inspired and the actors getting inspired. Because about the text as well. At first, actually, I had one of our cast members, Ahmed, who played Claudio, came up to me after our first reading of the play and said that a lot of it, sometimes it geared more towards classical Arabic and sometimes it geared more towards colloquial. I said that was an intentional choice on my part to bring out the characters that speak in verse and the characters that speak in prose. Verse speakers geared more towards classical Arabic. It's because the choice of the words and the structuring of the sentences was more complex. So I decided to leave that distance for a bit, to have the text be closer to classical Arabic. And characters, for example, such as Mistress Overdone or Pompey or Lucio, for example, they would range between speaking into street colloquial Egyptian and Lucio, for example, because he's quite a chameleon, so he speaks to the king in verse and then speaks to Mistress Overdone in prose. So how I made those choices was dependent on the character, how the character was written in the original version. Because, for example, Shakespeare doesn't tell you, oh, for example, this person went to Harvard or this person went to this, so they know how to speak. No, you just tell from his own choices and his the meter itself, and how some characters stick to it, how some characters don't. It tells you a lot about them and their background. Yes.
So when you were doing the production design of the play, so the costumes, the physical aspects, and all that, were you drawing on particular sorts of inspirations? Like, for instance, in Lucio's performance, which I enjoyed very much, by the way. You know, I noticed a real kind of echoes of like Egyptian film comedy and things like that.
Honestly, a lot of the research that myself and our costume designer and our movement director was from seeing people on the streets. For example, Lucio's character, Maria, for example, had dubbed him as the double denim disaster. Because we see those examples a lot on the streets of people just wearing double denim. It's their choice. I'm not criticizing their fashion choice. However, it's a choice, and it's a character that you see and you know where this person's come from. You know exactly why they make these choices, for example. With characters, for example, the higher status characters, such as, for example, the king, who was the duke in the original play, I made a choice with that as well to call him the king. Because duke is, first of all, quite a heavy word to pronounce in Arabic. And it's not as familiar for audiences listening to it. So I thought, okay, he's the king, and that's it. So in Malik is, I thought, would be easier to digest than in Duk. So higher status characters, for example, I put them in classy suits. Had Lucio in Double Denim Disaster, Isabella, for example, in a nun's habit. Sometimes, actually, Isabella is put in regular clothes because she's a novice nun, she's new. However, I made the choice to keep her in a nun's habit. And made the specific choice with Isabella specifically in her performance to steer clear from any sexuality when she's with Angelo, and to only focus on the words. However, what you saw here is a fantasy, is in Angelo's head only. However, which Devine played very nicely in the show, is to speak the words and play the action. Play why she's there. And not because I told him on the first day of rehearsals, I said, if you play any sort of seduction, the audience will hate you. And they will be on Angelo's side, which is scary. So this is what we played, except in this scene, which happens in Angelo's head. And so we had Isabella slip into his fantasy. I know you have classes and everything, but yeah, thank you very much.